My beloved child. A quiet conversation has already begun somewhere your name was never expected to appear, and what makes this moment so unusual is that no one planned for those words to carry so much meaning. You may not have heard a single sentence, yet something within your heart has been sensing that an unseen shift has been taking place. That feeling was not created by chance. It arrived because someone close to your soulmate found themselves unable to ignore what they had quietly noticed about you. Don't skip, every piece of this story matters more than it first appears. The remarkable part is that this person was never trying to become part of your journey. They were simply watching life unfold from the edge, observing little moments that most people would have overlooked. They noticed how your presence seemed to leave a lasting impression without demanding attention. They noticed the patience you carried when no reward was guaranteed. They noticed the quiet strength that remained even after disappointment tried to rewrite your story. None of these moments looked extraordinary on their own, yet together they formed a picture that became impossible to dismiss. What surprised them most was not who you are today, but how consistently your character remained the same when nobody was watching. In a world where appearances often speak louder than actions, they discovered something much rarer. They realized that your kindness was not a performance, your hope was not temporary, and your sincerity did not depend on who happened to be looking. Without intending to, they began comparing every conversation they had about relationships to the example your life quietly reflected. Meanwhile, your soulmate remained unaware that these silent observations were gathering in someone else's heart. Ordinary conversations continued. Familiar routines came and went. Yet beneath those everyday moments, a new perspective was slowly taking shape. One thoughtful remark turned into another. One unexpected realization opened the door to another question. And before anyone fully recognized it, your name had become part of a conversation that carried far more weight than anyone anticipated. What makes this even more meaningful is that the person speaking wasn't trying to persuade your soulmate toward any decision. Their words were calm, honest, and almost reluctant. They simply shared what they had come to understand after watching from a distance. Sometimes the most powerful voices are not the loudest ones. They are the voices that speak only after taking the time to truly see. There is a reason your heart has occasionally felt as though unseen pieces were quietly moving into place. Not because everything changes overnight, but because genuine recognition often begins long before anyone speaks it aloud. Seeds of understanding are planted in silence before they ever bloom into visible moments. Stay till the end. Because the identity of this unexpected voice carries a meaning you would never have guessed. As this unseen conversation continued, one sentence caused the entire atmosphere to pause. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't emotional. It was simple, and precisely because it was so simple, no one could easily dismiss it. The room became quieter than before, and even your soulmate found themselves reflecting on those unexpected words long after the conversation had ended. But what was that sentence? And who was the person courageous enough to say it? That answer is closer than you think, and it changes everything that follows. Something almost invisible happened after that conversation ended. No announcement was made. No dramatic scene unfolded. Yet silence itself began carrying a different meaning. The person who had spoken about you did not rush to repeat their opinion or convince anyone else. They simply walked away, trusting that genuine words have a way of echoing long after the voice becomes quiet. My child, there are moments when the greatest influence comes not from speaking more, but from saying exactly what needed to be said only once. Don't skip, because the next piece reveals why those few words lingered so deeply. Your soulmate tried to return to ordinary life, but something had changed within their thoughts. Familiar places suddenly reminded them of conversations they had forgotten. Small moments brought unexpected memories back to the surface. It wasn't because someone was pressuring them. It was because a fresh perspective had gently entered their heart, inviting them to notice what had always been there but had never been fully understood. The person who spoke about you had witnessed something your soulmate had overlooked for far too long. They had seen how your actions carried quiet consistency. They had noticed that even during uncertain seasons, you continued choosing patience over pride, understanding over frustration, and hope over discouragement. Those observations could not be argued with because they came from real moments, not assumptions. As the days unfolded, your soulmate found themselves replaying ordinary memories with extraordinary attention. They remembered conversations that once seemed small. They recalled little gestures they had almost forgotten. Suddenly, details that once appeared insignificant began fitting together like pieces of a picture that had been incomplete all along. Then another realization quietly settled into their heart. What if I never truly saw them for who they really are? That question refused to disappear. It followed them through peaceful evenings, familiar routines, and quiet reflections. The answer did not arrive immediately, but every passing moment seemed to draw them closer to it. Something important is waiting for you, because the truth has a way of arriving gently before it arrives clearly. Meanwhile, the mysterious person remained completely unaware of the effect their words had created. They weren't trying to change anyone's future. They had simply spoken from sincerity. Yet sincerity often carries a quiet strength that reaches places where persuasion never can. Your soulmate slowly began noticing something else. Whenever your name entered a conversation, there was an unexpected warmth surrounding it. Not excitement. Not exaggeration. Just a peaceful certainty that was difficult to explain. It felt as though every honest observation about you pointed toward the same conclusion, even when spoken by different people. And then, without anyone planning it, another conversation began to form. This time, it wasn't about whether you mattered. It was about who had understood your heart long before everyone else did. The answer to that question is far more surprising than your soulmate ever imagined, and when that person's identity is finally revealed, the meaning behind every earlier conversation will suddenly become clear. A single unexpected remark, spoken days after the first conversation, changed the direction of everything. It came so naturally that no one recognized its importance at first. Yet your soulmate became unusually quiet, as though one forgotten piece of a much larger picture had finally slipped into place. Some moments never ask for attention, they simply reshape the heart without making a sound. Stay till the end, because what happened next revealed that the first conversation had never truly ended. The mysterious voice had continued watching from a respectful distance. There was no intention to interfere, no desire to take control of anyone's story. Instead, they kept noticing the same pattern again and again. Whenever your name appeared, the atmosphere seemed to soften. Conversations became more thoughtful. Quick judgments disappeared. Even those who barely knew you found themselves speaking with unexpected respect. That observation led them to ask a quiet question. Have you ever wondered why every meaningful story you tell about them ends with admiration? Your soulmate didn't answer immediately. Instead, they searched through old memories, almost as if opening pages that had remained untouched for a long time. They remembered ordinary conversations that now felt extraordinary. They remembered moments when you offered understanding instead of expecting recognition. They remembered how your presence often brought calm when situations felt uncertain. None of those memories demanded attention when they first happened, yet together they painted a picture that could no longer be ignored. The person smiled gently, not because they believed they had discovered something new, but because they realized your soulmate was finally discovering it for themselves. That was always the purpose. Not to persuade. Not to convince. Simply to help someone notice what had quietly been true all along. Don't skip, because the next realization arrived from a place no one expected. As the conversation continued, another surprising detail emerged. This wasn't someone who had known every chapter of your life. In fact, they had only seen small glimpses of who you were. Yet sometimes a few genuine moments reveal more about a person's character than years of casual acquaintance. They spoke about your consistency. They spoke about your quiet respect for others. They spoke about the way you carried hope even during uncertain seasons. Each sentence was simple, but together they carried remarkable weight. Your soulmate listened more carefully than ever before. Not because the words were dramatic. Because they felt undeniably real. Then came a pause. It lasted only a few seconds. But within that silence, one final thought began forming in the speaker's heart, a thought they had hesitated to share until now. When those words are finally spoken, you'll understand exactly who this person is, and why their opinion means far more than anyone realized at the beginning of this story. No one expected the next conversation to begin with a quiet smile instead of a serious expression. That simple smile carried the confidence of someone who had been observing for much longer than anyone realized. It wasn't the smile of someone holding a secret out of excitement. It was the smile of someone who had patiently waited for the right moment to speak. Don't skip, because this is where the hidden connection starts to reveal itself. Your soulmate looked at them with growing curiosity, sensing there was still something left unsaid. Until now, every word had pointed toward you without fully explaining why those observations felt so certain. The silence between them became almost as meaningful as the conversation itself. Then the person finally said, "Do you know what impressed me the most?" Your soulmate quietly shook their head. It wasn't what they said. It wasn't what they achieved. It was how they treated people when they had nothing to gain. Those words settled gently into the room. For a long moment, neither of them spoke again. Your soulmate began remembering moments that had once seemed too ordinary to matter. A kind response that wasn't expected. A patient choice made during an uncomfortable situation. A conversation where you listened more than you spoke. At the time, those moments passed almost unnoticed. Now they returned with surprising clarity, as though they had been waiting for this exact moment to be understood. The person continued with calm certainty. Anyone can appear impressive for a day. But very few remain genuine over time. That's why I paid attention. There was no exaggeration in those words. No attempt to make you seem perfect. Only an honest reflection of what they had personally witnessed. Something important is waiting for you, because your soulmate was beginning to realize that these observations weren't coming from emotion alone. They were coming from someone who rarely formed opinions quickly. Someone whose words carried weight precisely because they were spoken so carefully. For the first time, your soulmate became curious about something they had never thought to ask before. When did you start noticing all of this? The question lingered in the air. The answer arrived with quiet confidence. Long before either of you realized your story was becoming important. Those words created another thoughtful silence. Suddenly, the timeline changed. This wasn't a recent opinion. This wasn't a passing impression. Whoever this person was, they had been quietly watching your character reveal itself through ordinary moments over a long period of time. And then, just as your soulmate prepared to ask the one question that could reveal everything, the person looked away for a brief second, took a gentle breath, and began to explain exactly where they had first met you. That memory changes everything. And it finally brings you one step closer to discovering who this unexpected voice truly is. My beloved child was never spoken again after that first beginning, yet those words continued to echo through everything that followed, because now the story had reached a place where memories carried more weight than questions. The person leaned back for a moment, almost as though they were searching through countless ordinary days to find one that had quietly become unforgettable. You asked me when I first noticed them, they said softly. The truth is, I didn't notice them because they were trying to stand out. I noticed them because they never tried to. Don't skip, because this memory explains why your name stayed in someone's heart long before anyone realized it mattered. Your soulmate listened without interruption. Every passing second felt slower than the last. There was no dramatic revelation, only the quiet feeling that something meaningful was slowly unfolding. The person continued, the first time I saw them, nothing remarkable happened. There was no grand conversation. No unforgettable introduction. In fact, if I had written that day down in a journal, I probably would have called it ordinary. But sometimes ordinary moments carry extraordinary truths. They smiled gently before continuing. I remember watching people move from one conversation to another. Everyone seemed eager to be heard. Everyone wanted to leave an impression. Yet your name never entered the room through loud words. It entered through calmness. Through patience. Through the way you listened before speaking. Your soulmate lowered their eyes for a moment. That description did not feel exaggerated. It felt familiar. Another memory quietly surfaced. There had been countless occasions when you could have demanded attention, yet you chose understanding instead. Countless opportunities to prove yourself, yet you allowed your actions to speak more clearly than explanations ever could. The person nodded, almost as if they could sense those same memories returning. That is why I remembered. They paused. People often remember the loudest voice in the room for a few hours. But they remember quiet character for years. Those words settled deeply. Not because they were complicated. Because they were true. Something important is waiting for you. As the conversation continued, your soulmate began realizing something unexpected. Every compliment this person shared came from something they had personally witnessed. Nothing sounded borrowed. Nothing sounded imagined. Every sentence carried the quiet confidence of experience. I've watched them during comfortable moments, the person said. I've also watched them during uncertain moments. And strangely enough, their heart remained the same. That final sentence lingered in the silence. Consistency. That was the quality this person admired more than anything else. Not perfection. Not popularity. Not appearances. Consistency. The ability to remain kind without needing recognition. The ability to remain hopeful without immediate results. The ability to remain respectful even when nobody seemed to notice. Your soulmate slowly whispered. I never realized someone else was paying attention. The answer came almost immediately. Most genuine qualities are seen by more people than we imagine. For several moments, neither of them spoke. The quiet itself seemed to carry the conversation forward. Outside, life continued exactly as it always had. Inside, everything felt different. Your soulmate began revisiting small memories that had once appeared insignificant. A thoughtful response. A gentle smile. A moment of encouragement offered without expecting anything in return. Each memory returned with greater clarity than before. One by one. Piece by piece. Like scattered lights slowly forming a single picture. Then the person said something that surprised even themselves. You know what convinced me? Your soulmate looked up. I realized they never changed depending on who was standing in front of them. That sentence seemed to answer questions your soulmate had never even asked. Many people become different versions of themselves depending on the audience. Yet what this person had witnessed was something much quieter. The same honesty. The same warmth. The same steady spirit. Again and again. That realization became impossible to ignore. Don't skip. Because another memory was waiting. The person looked toward the window before speaking again. There was another day. It wasn't important to anyone else. But I still remember it. Your soulmate leaned forward. I watched someone misunderstand them. I expected frustration. I expected disappointment. I expected an argument. But instead, they answered with patience. The room became completely silent. Not because patience was unusual. Because genuine patience had become increasingly rare. I walked away that day thinking. If someone can protect their peace during misunderstanding, They're carrying something beautiful inside. Your soulmate quietly smiled for the first time. Not a large smile. Just enough to reveal that something inside had begun softening. The conversation was no longer about proving anything. It had become about recognizing what had quietly existed all along. Then another thought appeared. One your soulmate had avoided asking. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? The person laughed softly. Because some truths are heard only when the heart is ready. That answer remained in the room long after it was spoken. There are seasons when advice feels too early. There are seasons when encouragement arrives too late. But every once in a while, the right words meet the right moment. And everything changes without anyone forcing it. Something important is waiting for you. Your soulmate sat quietly, reflecting on conversations from months ago. Suddenly, forgotten details returned. There had been subtle moments when other people had spoken positively about you. Small remarks. Gentle observations. Simple appreciation. At the time, they passed unnoticed. Now they connected together. Like stars finally becoming a constellation. The person noticed your soulmate's expression. You see it now, don't you? A slow nod answered. I thought those were isolated moments. They never were. They were all pointing toward the same truth. The person smiled again. Exactly. Different people. Different days. The same conclusion. No dramatic promises followed. No extraordinary predictions. Only quiet recognition. Sometimes the strongest confirmation comes when separate voices, without planning it, arrive at the same understanding. The room felt lighter now. Not because every mystery had been solved. Because understanding had replaced uncertainty. Then the person became unexpectedly thoughtful. There is one final memory. I've never shared it. Your soulmate immediately became attentive. The atmosphere changed once again. Not with tension. With anticipation. It happened on a completely ordinary afternoon. There wasn't a celebration. There wasn't an important event. I simply happened to see them encouraging someone who believed nobody noticed. They stayed. They listened. They reminded that person they still mattered. They walked away without expecting thanks. The speaker looked down for a moment. I don't think they ever realized I witnessed that. Your soulmate remained silent. Because now the picture had become complete. This wasn't admiration built on a single event. It was built through countless unnoticed moments. Tiny choices. Small acts. Quiet consistency. The kind of qualities that rarely make headlines. Yet leave lasting impressions. Don't skip. Because one question still remained unanswered. Your soulmate finally asked. Who else knows all of this? The person smiled with gentle certainty. More people than you think. Most have never spoken. They simply observed. They respected. They remembered. A peaceful silence followed. Then, almost in a whisper, the person added. And there's one more reason I wanted to tell you everything today. Your soulmate looked up once more. The answer was already beginning to form. But it had not yet been spoken. The next few words would finally reveal why this conversation had started at all. And why the person chose this exact moment, after so much time had passed, to share what had been resting quietly in their heart.